Prove you're smart. The developer smirked, tossing the shattered blueprint tablet onto the table. The floor-to-ceiling windows of the luxury firm glared with sunlight, but all eyes were on him. The arrogant white developer who thought his wealth made him untouchable. His voice dripped with sarcasm as he turned toward the young black teen standing beside his mother, the cleaning lady. "Go ahead, genius," he sneered. "If you're really as smart as she says, fix this design flaw my team couldn't solve in a week. If you can do that, I'll make you chief architect for a day." The room burst into laughter, shallow, corporate, cruel. Keisha froze by the cleaning cart, her hands trembling around a half-folded rag. Her son, Malik, only 16, stood still, his calm eyes locked on the broken tablet. The same calmness he wore every time someone mocked his mother's accent or called her help instead of her name. He didn't look angry, just focused. "May I?" Malik asked quietly. His deep voice carried across the polished boardroom, silencing the laughter for a moment. Logan, the developer, leaned back in his leather chair. "Sure, kid. Impress us. Just don't cry when you fail." Malik picked up the tablet, carefully tracing the glitching display with his thumb. His voice was steady. "I'll need 10 minutes. And your word." "My word," Logan scoffed, "that you'll keep your promise. In front of everyone here." The laughter faded completely. Even the senior architect stopped pretending to type. Keisha whispered under her breath, "Baby, please don't." But Malik didn't move his gaze. He had spent his whole life watching people like Logan, the ones who smiled while stepping on others. And now, in this quiet tension, the boy who came to help his mother after school stood taller than the man who signed her paycheck. If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now, because stories like this are still happening and the world needs to hear them. Logan grinned and checked his gold watch. 10 minutes, genius. Start the clock." Malik exhaled slowly, his mother's eyes filled with fear. But deep down, something inside him whispered, this isn't a test. It's a reckoning. The day always started the same for Keisha. The sound of the alarm before sunrise, the quiet creak of her worn apartment door, and the hum of the bus that carried her across the city to clean someone else's dream. But lately, her mornings had changed. Malik insisted on walking her to work before heading to school, his backpack slung low, his eyes sharp and alert. "Mom, you shouldn't let him talk to you like that," Malik said one morning, his voice steady but simmering with quiet anger. Keisha smiled sadly. "Baby, rich folks like him, they don't see us. They see what we do, not who we are." Malik stared out the bus window. Then maybe it's time someone made him look. The developer's company, Logan Design Build, stood like a monument to arrogance. Glass walls, golden lettering, a lobby bigger than their entire apartment block. Malik had been inside only a few times, always to help his mother carry cleaning supplies to the upper floors. But every visit left an impression: the laughter of executives, the smell of money, and the feeling of being invisible. At home, their world was smaller but filled with warmth. Old electronics, spare wires, and tiny circuit boards covered their kitchen table. Malik spent hours hunched over them, building things out of scrap: radios, fans, even a working drone made from broken toys. His dream wasn't money, it was dignity. One night, while Keisha folded laundry, Malik looked up from his project. "Mom, why do you never tell them you used to study design before I was born?" She chuckled softly. "Because no one wanted a maid with opinions about architecture." He smiled faintly. "Maybe they should." A storm was brewing quietly beneath their small apartment's flickering light. Malik didn't know it yet, but the skills he'd been teaching himself, patience, observation, precision, were about to collide with the arrogance of a man who thought people like them had no place in his perfect world. Because sometimes justice doesn't knock. It waits, in silence, until the moment someone dares to open the door. The next morning, the building buzzed louder than usual. Logan, the developer, had gathered his entire senior team for what he called a productivity challenge. He stood at the center of the glass conference room, smirking like a ringmaster before his show. Keisha moved silently along the wall, wiping the glass doors, trying to stay invisible. But when the new intern dropped a tray of coffee cups, The noise drew every eye, including Logan's. "Keisha," he barked, "you brought your son again?" She froze, rag still in hand. Malik had just arrived to help her carry supplies from the basement. He nodded politely. "Good morning, sir." Logan's smirk returned. "Good morning? You mean good opportunity." He held up a sleek holographic tablet, showing a digital model of a luxury housing project. "My top engineers can't figure out why the system keeps crashing. We've wasted an entire week. Since your mother says you're some kind of genius, why don't you prove it?" The room chuckled. Low, mean laughter, the kind that crawls under your skin. Keisha whispered, "Logan, please, he's just a kid." But Logan wasn't listening. "Come on, boy. Let's give everyone some entertainment. If you solve it, I'll pay you what I pay my architect for a week. But if you fail, your mom cleans a rooftop pool by herself all month." The room went silent. Everyone knew how brutal that task was. Hours under the sun, no breaks. Malik's jaw tightened. "Do you promise?" Logan grinned. "You have my word." The tension thickened. Malik walked forward slowly, every step echoing against the marble floor. He took the tablet carefully, studying the flickering interface. His fingers glided across the screen, steady, confident. "Looks like a rendering loop," he murmured softly, more to himself than anyone. "The code's referencing missing materials. That's why it keeps crashing." The developers at the table exchanged puzzled glances. Logan laughed. "Big words, kid. You think you're smarter than my tech team?" Malik didn't answer. He adjusted the settings, found the broken command lines buried in the architecture software, and began to correct them manually. For 2 minutes, only the soft clicking sound filled the room. The mockery had stopped. Then, the projection on the wall flickered once, twice, and stabilized. The 3D model came to life, rotating smoothly with perfect lighting. No one breathed. Logan's smile faded as a soft gas spread across the table. That's impossible," one engineer muttered. Malik calmly placed the tablet back on the table. "You said 1 week's pay for your architects." Logan's voice cracked. "That was just a joke." Malik's tone stayed calm, but his words carried weight. "So was your word, then?" For a moment, the air in that glass tower froze. Every face turned toward Logan, the man who had mocked a teenager and lost. "If this happened right in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want justice as much as I do, hit subscribe." The silence that followed was heavy enough to choke the air. Every executive in the room avoided eye contact, afraid to breathe the same air as the boy who had just embarrassed their boss. Logan forced a laugh, dry, forced like glass cracking. "Relax, everyone. It's a coincidence. Probably glitched back on its own." But Malik didn't respond. He looked at him, calm as stone. "You said your word meant something. Are you still that man?" Keisha's heart pounded. This was no longer a boy standing up for his mother. This was power shifting, one heartbeat at a time. Logan straightened his tie, pretending control. "Let's not overreact. This isn't a courtroom, it's business." Malik placed the tablet back on the table, his voice clear. "Business is built on promises." The executives exchanged glances. One of them, an older man named Carter, finally spoke. "He's right, sir. We all heard your bet." Logan shot him a glare sharp enough to cut. "Carter, stay in your lane." But the damage was done. The hierarchy had cracked. Malik picked up his phone slowly, pressing play on a voice memo. The sound echoed through the room, Logan's own voice mocking, promising. "If you fix it, I'll pay you what I pay my architects." "My word." Logan's jaw clenched. "You were recording me?" Malik didn't blink. "No, sir. I was recording her humiliation. You just happened to volunteer yourself." Keisha gasped softly. Every person in the room now knew. This boy was not just clever. He was strategic. Logan took a step forward, voice shaking between fury and fear. "You don't know who you're messing with." Malik met his eyes. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A man who hides behind money because truth terrifies him." The senior architect spoke quietly, almost in awe. "Kid, how did you even know where to look in the code?" Malik shrugged. "Because I spent my life fixing what people like him break." The words hit harder than any shout. Keisha stood still, tears welling, pride cutting through the fear she'd lived with for years. Logan tried one last smirk. "You want a check? Fine. Take your money and go." Malik smiled faintly. "Keep your money. You'll need it for lawyers." The entire room froze. That was the moment Logan realized he'd lost more than a bet. He'd lost control. The next morning, chaos rippled through Logan Design Build. Word of the genius teen who exposed the boss had spread through every floor. The clip Malik recorded had quietly made its way to the firm's internal group chat, and by noon, it leaked online. A trending post now read, "Racist developer humiliates cleaning lady's son, then gets humbled on camera." Keisha's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Strangers were calling her brave. But bravery wasn't what she felt. It was fear. Fear of what Logan would do next. That fear proved right when her supervisor cornered her in the hallway. "Keisha, I'm sorry. Mister, Logan said your services won't be needed anymore." She froze. "You're firing me?" He avoided her eyes. "It's complicated." But nothing about this was complicated. It was retaliation. Plain and cruel. Malik arrived minutes later, finding her holding the cardboard box of her cleaning supplies. "He fired you?" She nodded silently. Malik's eyes darkened. "Good. Good," she whispered, tears threatening. He took her hand. Because now he's got no idea what's coming. That same afternoon, Malik and Keisha walked into a law office. Small but busy, walls lined with framed justice quotes. Behind the desk sat Mr. Darius Johnson, Keisha's old friend and Malik's mentor, a civil rights attorney who once lived in the same neighborhood. Darius leaned back after hearing everything. "You recorded his promise. The challenge, the mockery, the firing, all within 24 hours? Malik nodded. Every word. Darius smirked. "That's not a coincidence. That's a case." He slid a file across the desk labeled racial discrimination, employer retaliation. Within 48 hours, legal papers were drafted. Reporters started asking questions. Channel 7 requested an interview. Logan's PR team scrambled, issuing a vague statement. The company does not condone discrimination and is reviewing the incident internally. But damage control couldn't undo what the world had already seen. By the end of the week, the Department of Labor had opened an investigation. Former employees came forward, each with their own story of bias, underpayment, or silence under Logan's rule. Keisha watched the news from their couch, disbelief softening into quiet strength. Malik, beside her, simply said, "You see, Mom, the truth doesn't need money. It just needs proof." She smiled through tears. "You sound like your father." Malik looked at her, serious now. "No, Mom, I sound like justice." The boardroom that once echoed with arrogance now reeked of fear. Logan sat behind his desk, his phone lighting up every few seconds. Calls from investors, lawyers, journalists. Each new ring was another nail in the coffin he had built with his own ego. The TV in the corner played the headline on repeat. Developer accused of racial discrimination after viral video. Keisha watched from home, disbelief and relief mixing in her chest. Malik sat beside her, quietly scrolling through messages of support flooding in from strangers across the country. Then came the moment no one expected, a press conference. Attorney Darius Johnson stood before the cameras with Keisha and Malik at his side. His tone was calm but firm. "We are filing a lawsuit against Logan Design Build for racial discrimination, verbal humiliation, and unlawful termination. But this case is bigger than one company. It's about accountability." Flashes from cameras lit the room. Reporters shouted questions. Malik didn't speak. He didn't have to. His calm expression said everything. Inside the firm, panic erupted. Executives began resigning. Clients withdrew contracts. The bank froze Logan's accounts. Within a week, the empire he had built on arrogance and exploitation began to crumble. One evening, Logan returned home to find reporters outside his mansion gates. Mr. Logan, did you really fire her because she was black? He didn't answer. He couldn't. The shame was louder than any response. A month later, the verdict arrived. The court found the company guilty of discrimination, retaliation, and moral damages. The settlement, $12 million. Keisha refused to take it all. Half goes into a scholarship fund, she said firmly. Malik nodded, smiling proudly. For kids like me, who just need someone to believe in them. The story made national news. Commentators called it the blueprint case, a poetic ending where a broken digital design exposed something far uglier than a system error. Logan, once known for building skyscrapers, now sat in a modest apartment, scrolling through the same headlines that once glorified him. He finally understood he hadn't lost a teenager. He'd lost the truth. A soft morning light poured through the wide glass windows of a new community center on the city's east side. On the front sign, in bold silver letters, were the words, "The Malik Johnson Innovation Academy." Inside, rows of donated computers hummed softly while children crowded around them, learning code, design, and digital art. Keisha walked through the hallway, no longer carrying a mop or cleaning cloth, only pride. Her smile was a quiet kind, the one built from pain turned into purpose. A reporter approached her gently. "You could have kept the entire settlement. Why open a school?" Keisha looked toward the classrooms. Because this story was never about money. It was about reminding the world that brilliance doesn't belong to privilege. It belongs to anyone brave enough to stand tall. Malik, now dressed in a simple black hoodie, spoke with a group of students. One of them asked, "Is it true you made a billionaire apologize?" He chuckled. "Not exactly. I just proved that truth doesn't need power to be heard. It only needs a voice that won't back down." The camera caught the moment. The young man once mocked as the made son, now inspiring dozens of children who looked at him like a hero. At that same time, far away in a small apartment, Logan watched the opening ceremony on TV. His face was hollow, eyes tired. The man who had once stood above everyone now sat below everything he had built. The announcer's voice echoed softly. "The Malik Johnson Innovation Academy, a new chapter born from justice, built on equality." Logan turned off the TV. Silence filled the room. Back at the academy, Malik stood beside his mother as they cut the ribbon together. He leaned in and whispered, "We didn't just win, Mom. We changed the blueprint." Keisha's eyes glistened. "No, baby, you rewrote it. If you believe this should never happen again, share this now. And to my USA, UK, and Canadian viewers, your voice is power. Use it.